There you go. Hey. Hello. Hello.
Adam, how are you?
All right. How are you?
I'm all right.
Good. Nice to see you.
Are you? Did you move upstate? What a clever fellow.
I like to take my leads from you. I waited about, I don't know how many decades, but yeah, it's something I kind of had been playing around with for quite a while anyway. There were a couple of last straws, so maybe there was a last straw and a penultimate straw. But of course, the pandemic, and then my dad passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude. That's brutal.
Yeah, so that was hard. So yeah, it was a really rough spring. And then on top of that, then I decided to move, and so that meant packing everything, my parents' stuff, my stuff, figuring all that out, and kind of doing it mostly alone because my sister just was very overwhelmed and busy and emotionally having difficulty with the loss. I mean, understandably. So I did it all I just said, well, it's all right. I'm already doing it. So but I didn't realize till I got here, Larry, in late June.
Uh-huh.
And I moved here. And every day after I moved in, I would crash in the middle of the day. I couldn't keep my eyes open.
Mm.
I was like, what's going on? I knew I didn't have any, I wasn't sick. But, for a solid month, I just had to take these naps every day because I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
I didn't know. It's like I was on autopilot for a while,
Well,
So,
congrats for making it up, and I'm sorry about your travails, but I do feel this is restorative, being up here.
Me too.
How did the kid enjoy his time, or is he sort of restless upstate? What do you guys figure out?
I'm still trying to figure it out. He was up here for a week, and then I took him down to things are a little bit in progress, or shifting all the time. His mother, again, I don't know how much I've told you in the past, is an actor, and Karen is on a series in LA, so that of course kept getting bumped.
Yeah.
And so she ended up having to come back. She also has a daughter who's not my child, where she had to set up a new home in New York because for legal reasons. And so she brought the kids back, and then but she's also has to go back to LA later in the fall. So the question has been, well, where will Jacob and his sister be? Will they be in LA? Will my son be in the Hudson Valley? So we're still kind of figuring it out. But in this period of time before she has to go back to LA and start working on that series, it's been really nice. He's come up. He seems to be okay. I drag him to the farm. I'll drag him to, on a walks, like at the rail trail by you. He's okay with it. He's like a city indoors kid. I don't know if your Jake was like that, but I don't see him getting really.
We're lucky because we brought Jack up every weekend during his grammar school years, and that really imprinted on him.
Right.
So
Well, yeah, that makes a big difference. You're right. I grew up going to summer camp up here through my childhood, so I love the area. I went, growing in Ulster County, so so I also had it in my blood. I felt like, I would spend entire summers up in Wallkill.
Yeah, I really believe, I'll just be honest, if you look at, the world news, so much of life is about imprinting. And that's part of parenting is, whatever you're hoping your kid will trend towards, you need to imprint it. They're just like, I'm not saying, but that's how, and then the other kid that plays video games, that's going to be their comfort, so these are the things that make the child. So, but
yeah.
maybe at the same time you can make that imprinting, you can change that later on. So we'll see. I think it's great that you're bringing him up, and maybe he'll see it as a refuge eventually.
I hope so. You know, as he mature. I mean, he's getting mature. You know, he's in
How old is he?
junior.
He's younger than Jack. He's
Yeah, yeah.
15. You think?
He's 16 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, he spent a couple of 2 or 3 summers at summer camp for like 3 weeks. Like, you know, I went for 8 or 9 weeks when I was a kid, but they have shorter terms or sessions now, um, and that was up in New Hampshire. So, you know, he's not been like that that isolated in the city, but you know, he likes it. And it's a very, very strong possibility that he will be doing his remote learning here. So
Oh wow.
yeah, and he doesn't seem to have a problem with that.
Well,
So,
that'd be pretty cool for you. I mean,
very,
whatever
yeah,
whatever the responsibilities, it is. It's an awesome time to be with the kid.
yeah, I agree. So you're back up here. Are you here for because the festival is um, giving tribute to the 35th anniversary of Glass Eye Pix, or are you up here for a few days, or are you trying to stay up here as much as possible?
I'm mostly up here. Obviously, we have our place in the city, but I always was gonna tend to spend more time here, and the pandemic created an excuse that my wife can't dispute as much as she would have. She likes the city and the social and the museums and what have you, but honestly, I've always been ready to spend more time up here. And
Oh, okay, yeah,
you know, with showbiz, everything's remote until you're working, and then you go wherever. So, you know, I go to the city usually once a week or to take care of something. But I'm digging it up here, and I hate the pandemic. I don't, you know,
a very controversial position to take.
Yeah, well, apparently it is.
Yeah, right.
Because I mean, that would be acknowledging there is a pandemic.
That's right. That's the first. That's right.
It's more controversial than you'd like to believe. So anyway, I'm having a great time up here. I've got lots of editing work, and I am sort of doing a few things for the anniversary, including I made Mayra acknowledge Glass Eye Pix. She wanted me to program some movies, and I said, well, listen, I'm going to program my movies. So I don't feel bad. I'm a promoter, and I think Glass Eye deserves it, especially up here. And what we've done with the festival's been really fun over the years, and I've felt support from them, and so I just had to nudge Mayra a little because she says she hates horror movies, but she doesn't know that our horror movies are exceptional.
Well, you know, I finally got her back on myself. I just did one of these with her the other day, and she described your movies as always having a subtext,
yeah,
of social import. Those aren't her words; those are barely mine. But she said, you know, so maybe it's her way of kind of meeting you halfway.
I do agree, and also it's how I pitch it, not only to her, but that's what I always say about my films. So I'm happy to carry that flag, whether or not people believe it.
And there's a long tradition. Go ahead.
Well, we can talk about this online, but the 3 movies that I've chosen are an example of that.
Wendigo, Bitter Feast,
and Steakland.
Steakland, of course, Jim Mickle's film. In your film?
Yeah. So
3 amazing films.
And very, very different. 2 of them shot in my house, which is funny. But
the one you're in right now?
Yes, that's right. But Wendigo really is about sort of the red state, blue state conflict and the resentments that bubble over and create violence. And it's about a kid trying to come to terms with seeing his father threatened by a hunter. But I also indicate that this isn't just an overnight thing, that the country folk that are up here also usurped the land from the Indians. And it's just a cycle of violence and um, jiggering for the land and cultural conflict. So Wendigo was always about that. And so in that regard, and it's also how we need mythologies to sort of understand a very random world. And that's the story of the child sort of taking on this mythology of the Wendigo. So I always like to work my own films with ambiguity
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of meaning and mythologies and what gives us our sense of narrative in the world. So I think Wendigo holds up quite well in this current political environment because I give the hunter good reason for resentment. And I also suggest that the father in the movie, who's a city guy who works in advertising, that he's not found the answers either because he's not really an attentive dad. He's not an attentive husband for that matter. And he seems to be driven on this, gerbil wheel of just trying to keep up in his line of business, advertising. So, it's an exploration of all of that. It came out, it was presented at the Woodstock Film Festival literally 2 or 3 weeks after 9/11. And
Wow.
so it was a very emotional time for everyone who attended the festival. And they did give me the top prize, although they insisted on sharing it with another film that was much more, seemed to be more relevant, more political. And
In a more obvious or right way, or
yeah, and forgive me, I don't remember the film, and it may well have been deserving, but my usual resentment is that, well, my films are political, but they're shrouded in sort of fantasy storytelling.
well, there's a great tradition in that too, by the way. I mean,
Sure.
right?
Well, I think most science fiction and most
Genre.
are also touches on real issues. That's why they speak to people. So
Sure. When you're writing those films and you are grappling, I guess, with those issues or those themes, let's say, I mean, how much of that is like, I think about songwriting in a way, it's very similar in the sense that you have maybe a hook in your head or, a line, but then as you develop the song and the lyrics, all of a sudden a theme emerges sometimes, or you don't even know it till after you finish the song 10 years later. I mean, it can come up at any time. So I was just kind of wondering how much of those themes you're thinking about as you write it.
I really appreciate the question because, so the critique of some of my work is that it's propaganda, that I'm trying to lay out a case. But in truth, an example is my film, The Last Winter, which is clearly about climate change and all the mistakes humanity is making. But, these are very personal stories. I take climate change very personally. I feel very sad that we're not attentive to sort of the natural rhythms and that we're not offended by toxicity and waste. And now, of course, it's entered into literally our national conversation and our morality. So maybe I'd make a movie about that. I mean, these are the things that touch me personally. So I do believe in making art, like I always say, like a magpie. You take an image, you take a thing, and you put it together and you start to see it. You try to wonder, what have I constructed here? And so then you realize, oh, I see, I'm harping on that topic, so it's a back and forth, but I would never go in and say, I'm going to make a picture that's going to expose inequality. And now we begin. That would be, well, then you should make a documentary, because Lord knows a good documentary that carries an audience is its own art form. So there's lots of ways to get into the issues, but I feel if the issues are always on your mind, I'm always concerned with how could society work better? What would we do? My outrage about politics is just that I feel we're sort of barking up the wrong tree. We're deliberately allowing ourselves to be disconnected and not to communicate, not to cooperate. And that is the tragedy about which I would make a movie. And I have.
Yeah. I was thought you were going to say that we hand over actions to politicians, and that hasn't worked ever. not, or it rarely works, seldom works. So maybe the idea is to stop doing that and to realize that we have to make the changes ourselves.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And in everyday life too, you know, in your
Right.
interactions at the coffee shop, you know, you should acknowledge. I mean, now they're called essential workers, but just,
Yeah, right.
6 months ago they were just you know, people you paid no attention to, and that's the problem in society. We need to re-engage and understand we're all in this together. All those cliches. Yes, you can't allow. And there's something about the way social media and all these things they've actually distorted even what a politician is. Now, when Donald Trump lies, everyone says, well, all politicians lie. And so that's the base assumption. But that shouldn't be the base assumption. The base assumption should be politicians are representing our views. That's why we voted for them. So they now should put forth programs that will help society be more cohesive. That's not even so, you know, we're sort of deliberately downgrading even our expectations. And that's really the destruction. They always say democracy is being destroyed. Well, it's because our expectations have shrunk due to, you know, I would say due to sort of the internet conversation.
Um, we talk about defunding the police, we should be defunding the politicians too. I mean, in the sense that
Well, you say that because I love that you say that, because the response to everything is give money to Joe and Kamala, you know, to fight for this and that. And I'm like, is that really the only expression of how to engage? And the other thing is, what is that money for? It's for an advertisement. And so you're also presuming that advertising is the only way to get a message out. I find it all very discouraging, and it makes me want to disengage from the structure of how we're solving our problems, because I don't think we are solving our problems. We're making worse problems. And yet, you know, if you say, well, I'm not going to give money, well, then how are you going to accomplish change? And obviously one answer is protests in the street, and then that gets defined. So you
well,
see,
sure, that gets compromised by and
terrible.
politicized, and
Yeah.
of course, yeah, it's a very, very difficult time. I mean, I choose that word.
The answer is to make scary movies.
Is that the answer?
Yes.
And they're going to be celebrating some of those scary movies at the Woodstock Film Festival in a couple of weeks. 3, a Wendigo, Bitter Feast, and again the Jim Mickle film. Why am I blanking again? The Steakland, of course. By the way, I meant to do this at the beginning. Is when I was moving in, I finally, my aunt said, "Now come down here to New Jersey and get your stuff out of my shed." So I finally got a lot of stuff out of that had been over there I forgot about and thought I lost long ago. But anyway, some of the things that have turned up in my move, that it's not everything, that I found this.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Throw it into the car if you still have a player.
I do.
Good.
And then, of course, the Beyond the Pale stuff.
Awesome. Also worthy of your car.
I also have the Strangers. Is that what Jack's band is called?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have somewhere here. I saw it the other day. I was looking for it. I thought I'd figure that. But do you have this?
Hey, man, that's beautiful.
Look how.
Who's that handsome devil?
I could have been his dad now, but I wrote a bunch of songs, and of course I was working in the music industry, so I had all these resources to do something like that. I mean, all the recording I paid for in the studio time, but the production on the package is actually probably better than the album quality. And this, I forgot. Look at this beauty.
Love that. You know,
that's my mom.
Oh, fantastic, dude. Wow, that's pretty fantastic. Look at that swimsuit. I love it.
She's beautiful.
I find my forays into music are the things I most enjoy revisiting. I mean, you can't necessarily watch a movie, and who would bother? I mean, I'll see a movie every 10 years that I've made. But with music, I find it very comforting. And because I'm not a great musician, but have done a lot of music over the years, I love to go back and sort of sit in awe and go like, oh wow, how did I come up with that sax solo or whatever? It's and there's a connection I have with the collaborators. Um, so anyway, yeah, here's two old albums. They're always worth throwing on.
Well, and the music was really a great component in making this past spring and summer to some degree. And moving up here was a great salve, but the music and picking up the guitar and really playing has been, I've gotten a lot of the muscle memory back, a lot of the, I rediscovered my relationship with it, which has been really, I didn't realize how much I missed it, but it's a real big part of me and my life. I mean, I was taking guitar lessons since I was 12, and played at camp, but then my dad would drive me out to the Great Neck every other weekend for years, where I learned jazz guitar, and I kind of, with this terrific guy named Joe Monk, who was an incredible guy. He also was taught jazz guitar to Andy Kaufman a number of years before me. So, yeah, he would tell me how, yes, Andy Kaufman, his mother would take him in and just sit there, and Andy would, just not blink. Sounds like exactly who he was 20 years later when he was doing his wrestling and stand-up and his.
Yeah. It's funny. I also wrote a bunch of songs. They were mostly fragments. In other words, I didn't finish them, but I would go out in the barn and croon away. And I hadn't written songs for some years. And then the COVID, I must have made 6 different sort of song ideas. And I recorded one of them and put it into a short film I made. So.
Oh, really?
I think it's been a good time to get back to the music. And the one email that I got throughout the pandemic, no matter how locked down we were, was from Guitar Center. And they were like, you too can own a guitar. Now's a good time to learn to play. And so it was really, I think they were onto something.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people, I did have it up to really try to get and learn the harmonica. Like I still haven't, but you have to have something that you're promising to do and then you never actually do it.
Sure.
I mean, that's typical. So you have to have one of those. But getting back and playing really well has been or much better, or getting a certain percentage of my skill back has been very gratifying, indeed. But you wrote, so you did a short, just like there on in the last few months?
Yeah.
Just to keep sane?
Because I had my wife and kid here, and that's what we like to do. So we made a movie, and we'll see what comes of it. But it was very cathartic, and we would get up every day and have a schedule, and
oh wow,
the way I make movies. I mean, we shot for 3 days, but it's a nifty little picture. And then I took my kid out to the barn, and I'm not really very good at any instrument. But he could play anything. So he laid down the drums, the bass guitar, and I
really
some crooning, and it was fun.
Wow.
So those other songs are unproduced, but I'm gonna have to get down and finish them and the whole thing.
Well, if I have my harmonica playing together by then, I'll offer that to you. And,
throw a track.
I don't think that's going to happen though, so don't worry. All right. So I know that I was going to go to Josh Leonard's, who's one of the stars of Bitter Feast, I understand. But I was going to go to see, I already did see it but I was going to go to the drive-in in Greenville that night to support him. He's a nice man. And his movie, did you happen to see it yet? His movie,
No.
Fully Realized Humans?
No, I'll see it at the
drive-in. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to go.
Money down and check it out.
What's that?
I'll lay my money down and check it out.
Yeah, and buy a ticket even. Or is it? And then are you showing Bitter Feast that night?
Yeah, we'll follow with Bitter Feast. I think.
Which then, of course, yeah.
I've got Joe Maggio, the director, coming, and
Oh.
I believe that we'll do a Q&A with Josh Leonard, which will be fun. But in any case, Bitter Feast we made some years ago. It was one of our great no-budget films, $100,000, crew of 7.
Wow.
We all lived in the house, so much so that we took over my son Jack's room and we made him live in the closet for 2 weeks while we shot. And like a prisoner, he would write on the walls as the days went by. But he was very quiet. And I think that's why he took an interest in filmmaking, because he was here seeing how intimate and friendly and actually sort of manageable a film was to make. And Joe was a great director. And it was our pal James LeGros and Josh Leonard going at each other as because of, this was in the early days of blogging. The premise of the story is that a restaurant critic, played by Josh Leonard, just writes a scathing, irresponsible review and torpedoes James LeGros' entire career as a chef. And, you know, he has pots and pans named after him, and his whole world collapses, and he exacts revenge by kidnapping Josh Leonard and making him cook to the precision that his reviews would demand. So it becomes this great cat and mouse film, sort of in the tradition of, well, anyway, I can't think right this second. What is it called? Death Trap. Anyway, an old movie.
Sure, Death Trap, of course. That was, I was just actually watching part of Sleuth, which I think was the, well, it was Death
similar
Trap.
film. Similar film. I love those 2 movies.
Yeah.
So, but it was also a great example of this low budget filmmaking, which Glass Eye Pix has always touted. But it was one of our smallest films ever, and it did well. It ended up, you know, in Walmart or whatever one does to get successful. But Joe Maggio had already made several films that were not in the horror genre. And I just liked how resourceful he was. He made a movie for like $5,000 that got into Sundance. So I knew he was the guy to sort of prove my point that with the right support system. So he felt like he had a huge crew and a huge support system.
Yeah, 100,000.
So it was a
And
really...
he didn't ask questions about the kid in the closet, you know, which was to his...
Nobody did.
somebody scratching on the... I hope at least it was a walk-in.
It was... No, it really wasn't. But I gave him a little DVD player, and he watched Hitchcock movies, also at my insistence. So I think it was a very scarring experience for him.
How old was he?
I'm terrible with those things, but he must have been 10 or 9 or something. And then
Wow.
years later, he made a movie at about that budget, although actually it was about half that, with James LeGros, and everyone lived in the house, and that's how we made that movie. So that was his first feature. So I really think there's a through line. Anyway, that's the...
Well, I think I took my son
Yeah,
to see at the world premiere of your son's film in Woodstock.
Yes, Stray Bullets.
Stray
Once
Bullets.
again, Woodstock has always been very supportive of young Jack's filmmaking. Once he made a half-hour zombie movie, and Mayra said, we do not take shorts that are over, 9 minutes. It's just you can't program them, and it's a disaster. And then she saw the movie, and she said, you know what? I do want to support this. I just think it's fantastic. And so she figured out how to program it, and it was a great lesson for Jack that actually you shouldn't make a short that's 30 minutes long.
9 minus minutes.
In fact, he came to us sometime later and said, I've learned my lesson. I want to make a feature. Instead of saying, I've learned my lesson, I want to make a 10-minute movie. That's my kid for you.
Are all 3 of the features Steakland, and I can't remember the other 2, but are they are they all going to be shown at the drive-in? A drive-in?
They're all in the Greenville Drive-in, except, which is to say, Bitter Feast and Steakland are playing in Greenville. and
Wendigo.
Wendigo, thank you. I couldn't remember it either. I'm very excited. Is playing next to the Colony in Woodstock proper, and I told Nayra,
the pop-up, yeah.
Yeah, I really like the thing about the festival that I've always liked is my memory of being at Tinker Street and then walking over to the Bear to the award ceremony and just the sort of the really intimate aspect of the Woodstock Film Festival. So I said I wanted to screen at least one of the movies right here in the town, and I'm so excited that she has this pop-up theater. So I hope it goes well for everybody. That's my favorite memory of the festival, is going to the Colony to watch a lecture or something, and then you wander over to the Bearsville complex and you watch a movie. And I really love when the town feels alive with the festival, all of which won't happen this year.
Well, certainly. You gotta say again.
We have our memories.
Well, and no, well, let's look forward too. I mean, I think that given another year, we'll figure it. If we're not fully back to what it looked like, let's say before this year, we'll have some semblance or a new direction or several new directions by next year, which will hopefully be more robust than some drive-ins. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think we're going to figure it out. I don't need to go back to the political conversation necessarily again, but obviously what happens over the next few weeks has a major impact. So vote, please, if you're watching. Please vote. Please vote. Yeah. Oh my God. But thanks. So I'll make sure that those dates of those screenings are very clear and clearly delineated, so people know.
Well, let me say at least a word about Steakland, and then
we'll. Oh yeah, that's a fun one.
So Steakland was directed by Jim Mickle. It was a little bit bigger of a project than Bitter Feast, and we put all our muscle into making this epic vampire zombie apocalyptic film, and it really has a big heart and follows this old grumpy man played by Nick Damici and his young protege, and their vampire hunting at the end of the world. And it really is yet again sort of a political metaphor, as most zombie movies tend to be, about society collapsing. But there's a lot of resonance, and it just shows that a lot of the things that are happening in our political sphere have been bubbling up for years, if not decades. And so it's interesting when a horror movie remains timeless, because it's talking about something that might happen, and then you watch it again and you go, damn, this is too close. But because it's a horror movie, it's shrouded in all the fantasy elements, and it's about the little survivors who work together, and it's a very great film. And Mickle went on to make some wonderful movies. It has a beautiful score, Steakland, and we filmed in Pine Hill, Margaretville, and so it's another local treasure.
As are you.
Well, listen, if you're going to be sarcastic,
no.
Now.
I meant that from the very heart of my bottom.
Hi. And now let's do the conclusion of the interview in our little Irish accent.
Right. Goodbye. No, as I was starting to say before, well, I'll try to, I won't try. I will make a point of putting all the locations, dates, times, all in the description of this, and make sure people know how to get to those. If you're in the Hudson Valley, come on out. Celebrate 35 years. It's a remarkable experience. You even dwarf the Woodstock Film Festival, which is only 21, drinking age, I might add. So, but your film festival, I'm sorry, your company is entering middle age almost.
Yes, as am I. I've become the grumpy old man on the porch saying, "Get off the
Oh
lawn."
my God. Exactly what that's what I was very self-conscious of that myself because I left, and that I moved. I don't like to say I left or abandoned New York because I always, if somebody says, "Oh, you left New York," I said, "No, New York left me,"
Ah,
because I feel like it's the city's also kind of been going in some directions that I've not been thrilled about over the last decade or two. But
right.
you know, but yeah, again, I don't want to be that guy on the porch, shaking his fist. Get off my lawn, you little bastards.
Well, it's funny you say that. I don't mind being that guy because you start out being a punk rocker and you're yelling at authority, and then I find it's quite an easy switch to become the old man yelling at the world. So to me, it's all
Mhm.
there's a through line. Just disgruntled, disgruntled
Disgruntled.
youth, disgruntled middle age, and soon to be disgruntled 6 feet under.
You have well, hopefully quite a long time before we have to
What
think
it'll
about
say on the tombstone.
that. he
Here
was
lies disgruntled.
he was disgruntled and loved by many.
He was disgruntled old man. That's fine.
That's enough.
He was gruntled old man. All
That
right.
looked a little like a little De Niro in there almost. I did.
What are you gonna do?
I can't have this.
That's good, man. Very good.
I'm not doing this. Ma, I'm talking to him now. Anyway. Let's conclude. And then I just want you for another minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thanks, Larry, and I'll see you at the drive-in. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's nice to see you after at least 6 or 7 months now.
Has it been? It seems like only yesterday.
It's been a little while, but it's good to be reconnected. And neighbors, essentially.
Right. Although, stay off the lawn, please.
I know. I
Nice
promise.
to see you, Adam. Congrats on your all your life changes, and
Thank you.
I wish you well. And thanks for talking with me.
Thank you. It's been fun.